I would like to welcome our guest today, Professor Jurgen Heizmann. Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you very well.
All right. There seems to be a little bit of a buzz on the line.
Ja, dat moeten we negeren.
Yeah, well, we'll ignore that one. Hello and welcome to our show. This is a show about language and culture and everything related to it. And today we decided to have a look or pay a visit to the Elzas region. Maybe the very first thing I should ask is, what's the actual correct pronunciation in whatever language the people of the Elzas speak?
Well, it's Elsass if they say it in German. It's Alsace if you say it in French.
All right. So yeah, there is a difference between the two. All right. Maybe we should locate the place, and maybe first of all, can you tell us who you are exactly? You are Professor Jurgen Heizmann, but I don't think many people here know you. So yeah,
probably not. Well, I was born in Freiburg and grew up in a village very close to the French border. So I know the Elzas region from my youth. I speak this dialect, Alemannic, but I studied in Heidelberg, and I was been teaching in Canada for 30 years in Quebec. And it's a funny thing, living in Quebec, in Montreal. I was confronted with multicultural surroundings, and as you might know, Quebec also has a language problem. It's a French province in a Canadian nation, and it was. I taught German literature at Montreal, but Quebec gave me the idea to study regions where the German language is confronted with another culture, and that's why I started to teach on Alsatian literature and discovered a little bit the history and culture of this region.
All right. I think that's yours. Yes. Okay, so yeah, indeed, Quebec is of course a very interesting case that we could actually address in our show at some point as well. So yeah, the Elzas, you mentioned something very interesting there in your introduction, the Alemannic dialect. So that is the dialect that they speak there.
Mostly. Alemannic dialect is spoken in the northern part of Switzerland, in the southwest part of Germany, and in Alsace, I would say until Hagenau, north of Strasbourg. Hagenau and north of Hagenau, it's a Franconian dialect. But yeah, for the most part, it's Alemannic.
Franconian dialect. Yeah, that is closer to home for us, of course.
Yes.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Alemannic is actually part of what is called High, not High German, or what's the High German, and then you have the varieties that are spoken closer to Switzerland. I forgot the name.
There are several varieties of the dialect. Yes, this standard German, as you say, and sometimes it's different from village to village. Yeah, in some villages, when they say no, they say nay, and in others they say nai. So of course, there are a lot of varieties of this dialect. Of course, as you probably know, this dialect is threatened today due to the French language policy, which was very strict. And my observation is that younger people hardly speak it anymore. I meet people who are 40 and older; they still speak the dialect, and I think it's their language of communication. It's the dialect, or it's French. Standard German is only used in written form, so it's not really spoken. If people speak German, it's the dialect, the Elsässerdeutsch, as they call it.
Now, yeah, you mentioned something interesting that I hadn't really thought of, but there's not just the issue of French, there's also, the one big difference I see, I know the situation in France a bit, several regions that I know of, like the Occitan region, the Breton region, they all have the same issues. The one big difference I would, if you could compare it with the Elsass, is that you actually have this big state language right next to your door. That's part of your language continuum, the German, standard German, which is something that the Breton people, for example, do not have.
Yeah,
I can imagine that that plays a role in it as well, but you say that it's only used in a written form.
Yeah, as I said, they don't speak standard German. They use it in written form, or as I said, they would use the dialect. But your observation is, I agree totally with that. The France, this started with the French Revolution, as a matter of fact. I mean, for them, all the dialects, all the regional languages were the barbaric relics of the Dark Ages, so to speak, and so they attacked them. But as you said, it's different for Britain because they don't have German neighbors. And in Elsass today, I mean, there are tens of thousands of Alsatian people crossing the border every day because a lot of them, they work in Germany. So there is a contact with the other culture all the time. But I'm a little pessimist. I agree with, there's an Alsatian writer who called Pierre Kretz, and he gave a very dark view of the situation. He published already in 1994 a book in French, La langue perdue des Alsaciens, the lost languages of the Alsatians. And his observation is that people under 40 hardly understand and speak the dialect anymore. Now, as you probably know, dialects are threatened everywhere. It's the same thing in Germany. I mean, people who want to make a career, dialect is often seen as something more provincial, and if you want to get ahead in life, you have to speak a noble language. But of course, it's much more important in Alsace than in Germany, because in Alsace, the dialect is the link to the other culture, to the German heritage and German identity. And so if the dialect disappears, the whole heritage will disappear. So I think that is the problem. Of course, there are also people who are fighting to preserve this heritage of this culture. There is the René Schickele Association. There are other associations who are trying to introduce the dialect in the École maternelle. As you know, in France, children go to school at 4 and they go to the preschool called École maternelle. And the situation after the Second World War was really bad for children because they suddenly had to speak French. Their maîtresse addressed them in French, and it was forbidden to speak dialects, even in break time.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. And so that changed a little bit after 1968, and especially in the 80s. There were several movements, and the Alsatians didn't wait always for Paris to decide how to deal with the situation. So some of them, they prepared programs for preschools so that teachers could have some material to teach the children in dialect. But nowadays there are some kindergartens and some preschools in Strasbourg especially where children can still do that and study in dialect. You can also study the dialect at the university now. But, I mean, the question is, can you study a dialect at school? Isn't it something you drink from birth? And as I said, my own observation is, I mean, young people I meet, they don't speak dialect, they speak French.
Yeah, that is something I've heard from other cases as well, that as soon as you bring the language to education, you actually create a new variety of the language, the educated version, you could say. There has been these discussions in Wales as well for the Occitan language. There is a standard Occitan, but nobody actually speaks it. You only learn it at school. So I imagine that. And yeah, on top of that, you have, of course, standard German when it comes to Elzas. So you have the dialect, you have the school version of the dialect, and then the standard German makes it a bit complicated, I would suppose. How would you deal with that? You've got 3 or 4 varieties that you have to learn or use at the same time.
Well, you can see it as an opportunity in a way. It could be enriching. Unfortunately, it was not always seen like that. I mean, as I said today, some people still try to fight for that, but it might be too late. That's what I was trying to say. Of course, what happened is all the street signs in Elsass today, they are in the two languages. There's the French version and there's the dialect version. In the museums, you can see there are now sometimes more and more German explanations also, or in public buildings. So the policy has changed a little bit in that point, in that aspect, but I have been living on the west coast of France before I came to Elsass, and I observed the French people over there. They had no clue whatsoever about Elsass. Some were asking me, "Do people speak French over there?" Or somebody even thought it's part of Germany. So I noticed that the French had no idea about Elsass. For them, it's a very unknown territory.
Wait, did you say that I believe it's part of Germany?
One person asked me, I don't know if it may be half a joke, but...
okay,
but
because I would imagine...
They were not sure if people spoke French over there.
Yeah.
And, when you think of the three important cities for the European institutions, Brussels, Luxembourg, and Strasbourg. Brussels and Luxembourg are multilingual cities, and if I'm not mistaken, proudly so. It's part of their identity. Strasbourg isn't. Strasbourg is just French. That tells you something about the attitude. The central state of France has decided one nation, one language, and even though there are some nations who are trying to fight that, I think this problem is still there.
Hello, a question from me. So, this is apparently a piece of land that a lot of people want to have, I suppose, because it has strategical value. So, after World War II, it changed from German, and all of a sudden everybody had to speak French. But hasn't it been the other way around too? That people spoke French there, and that all of a sudden everybody had to speak German, because it changed nationality several times, didn't it?
Yes, it did. There's a funny anecdote. There's the contemporary writer André Weckmann, who writes in dialect, standard German and in French, and he said his grandfather, who was born before 1870, he had to switch nationalities and languages 4 times in his life. And he said, in the end, what am I now, French, American? he said he lost completely the view of that. But yeah, I mean, if you go back to the history, the Elzas region was for 1,000 years part of the Holy Roman Empire of Germanation, and everybody spoke German or dialect. Things changed after the 30 Years' War. In 1648, the French nation became a little bit hungry, and they started to make the Elzas region part of France. But that didn't change much for the language, because at that time there was a lack of schools, hardly had any schools. And there's an estimate that in 1789, only 1% of the population could correctly speak French, and only 6% would understand it.
That was the year of the French Revolution, by the way.
So Elsass was still a German-speaking area. Napoleon also Napoleon didn't have a very strict language policy. He himself, his mother tongue was not French, and there's a famous saying of Napoleon. He said, "I don't mind my Alsatian soldiers speaking German as long as they fight French."
That's an interesting. Everyone would have thought, there's this idea of French Jacobinism, French centralism, but apparently the big chief of the French Empire himself didn't really mind other people speaking other languages then.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. It was with the French Revolution came the centralism, that's for sure. I just wanted to say it was not immediately like that the people had to abandon German. It was not punished to speak German at the time. That happened later. As you know, in 1871, the Elsass became German again. It was part of the new German Empire. People today, looking back, they describe this as a rather peaceful period in the history of the Elsass. Of course, Bismarck was a little bit suspicious of the Alsatian people, but at the same time, William II, he was very popular in Elsass because he visited the Elsass very often. He had 3 residencies there. He spoke the Alsatian dialect because his first love was an Alsatian woman. So he had a very positive attitude towards the Elsass. But there were always some Alsatian politicians who were, dreaming of going back to France. And I think one important thing is in 1871, when the Elsass became German, at the same time was born the Alsatian myth in France, that La Revanche, has become very important now for the French people to reconquer the Elsass. Well, that happened in 1918, but the French made a lot of promises to the Alsatians during the First World War. They said, we will respect your traditions, we will respect your language, and that did not happen. So for the Alsatian people, they didn't want to go back to Germany, but they felt betrayed by the French because suddenly they had to speak French. German was not allowed, and we couldn't teach German. The Alsatian teachers had to learn French and teach it next day the French to the children. The French called it la méthode directe. The Alsace felt not respected really by the French people. Of course, when Hitler came to power and Alsace became German again, things got even worse. At the time, if you spoke French then, you could be punished with prison or even with concentration camp. So that was a very bad period, and this cuts the ties, the emotional ties, I would say, of the Alsatian people to Germany. Somebody even said that Hitler has done more for the reunion of Alsace with France than any other politician. So it was clear after the Second World War that Germany was taboo. The Alsatian people were hiding even their German language, and at the same time, again, the French language policy was very strict. But basically, you can say that from the history, this was a German part of Germany, but had to be French several times. And today, they don't question that they belong to France politically. There's no doubt about that. It's just, I think, the Alsatian people would wish more autonomy in their decisions, which is very difficult in France.
So, in short, to summarize, basically you were stuck in between 2 rival powers of Europe, and you got crushed several times in between. That's actually a history that we can relate to as well, of course. Yeah, exactly. The Alsatians saw it exactly like that. Some people also say the French, they don't love us, and the Germans, they love us a little bit too much. And but basically, they were crushed between those two. Now, there were very interesting writers in the beginning of the 20th century when the Elsass became German. There was an interesting group of writers, René Schickele and Stadler, famous expressionist writers, and they called themselves Europeans, and they saw themselves as a link between the two cultures. They were writing in German, but they were not against France. They were really trying to...
So a bit the best of both.
Sorry?
So the best of both.
Yeah, exactly. And they were pacifists. They were against the war. And they were really trying to they were dreaming of a Europe. So often they are quoted as precursors of the European Union nowadays because they wanted to really build a bridge between the two nations.
Yeah, that is something that we've seen with various of these regional movements in Europe, that they look towards more of a united Europe where they could actually have a place that they were denied within the states. So I would imagine for the Elzas, they saw Europe more as a way to liberate the Elzas, you could say, or at least have a place, or have a say, have a voice, have your own place.
Yeah, I think a lot of regions, the other regions I know very well is South Tyrol in northern Italy. They all hoped the European Union would give them more autonomy, more recognition, because the European Union means that the nation state becomes a little less important. But I'm not sure if that really worked out.
Yes, is there any regulation, or are there any laws or rules within Europe that are benefiting the Elsass culture?
Well, I don't know if it's a law, but there are declarations that they want to protect the minorities and respect their traditions and cultures and so on. But in the end, it always depends, what is the policy in schools. And the thing is, German for a very long time was treated in Elsass as any other foreign language. It was not even taught in elementary school for a long time. Another problem is that English has replaced the German. Most of the Alsatian students, they opt for English as the first foreign language, not for German. There are some declarations, and I would call them I don't call them Sunday speeches, but it's the actual policy. I don't really see it.
All right, I suggest we take a little break with some more music, and then maybe we can talk about the present and the future of the Elzas region.
Yep.
I've got a song by Les Assoiffés, Sescher Mrne Drom. I probably butchered the pronunciation. What does it mean?
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
It's a song by Les Assoiffés, Sescher Mrne Drom.
Yeah, the thirsty one.
Ah, all right. Okay, I'll hear you in a moment then.
Okay.
Alrighty, so Les Assoiffés, it's curious that the band has actually a French language name.
Yeah.
But they do sing in German or, Elsass.
Dialect.
Yeah.
Alsatian dialect. Sechmanet drom, you can translate it with, that's not what I'm talking about. The title of the song.
Yeah, okay. So that's not what I'm talking about. All right. Yeah. We discussed the history, the past of the Elsass region, which went back and forth several times between two annoying neighbors, you could say. Did you want to ask them?
Oh yeah, cool. Nations, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, the present, of course, we've touched upon the present as well several times. Mostly the lack of support from the French government. You did mention there are some, from the European level, some treaties actually, but French is notorious. Yeah, French is notorious for not having signed and ratified the treaties. I suppose that is something that people in the Elzas and elsewhere are not very happy about.
Right. I will give you another example. In 2016, the French had this little bit naive idea to create new regions. A little bit with comparing to the German Bundesländer, they thought big regions are rich regions. So they put the Alsace together with Lorraine and Champagne-Ardenne to a very big region, and they baptized this region Grand Est. And I remember that at the time, every Alsatian street town sign had a black mourning ribbon, because for the Alsatian that was an attack on their identity. They were thrown together with two other regions. There were not really connections to Lorraine or to Champagne-Ardenne. So again, for the Alsatian people, this was clearly a sign of the French politicians that they didn't care about the autonomous or the situation of the Alsace. It is a very interesting. I read that last week. The Alsatians were trying to convince Paris to reconsider this construction, and this will be discussed now if they will not give Alsace back Alsace will be its own region for itself. But that is in the future. We have to see how Paris will decide.
I saw it somewhere in the news. maybe a month or two ago that apparently there was something that the Senate of France voted, that the Elzas region now has the ability, if they choose to do so, to become their own region again.
Yes. It is not decided yet as far as I know, but yeah, it is discussed and it was proposed, yeah.
Did you want? Oh, okay. But if I'm not mistaken, Elsass does have something of a statute at the moment. Is that correct? There is. There's a particular situation in Alsace. Is, for example, they have different holidays than the French people. They have a better health insurance, better pension plans. By the way, they had that 66 years before the rest of France. That was introduced at the time by Bismarck, as far as I know. But I wouldn't know of any other autonomous decisions the Elzas could take. Maybe you know more than me on that. So it's more of a symbolic, not even autonomy then.
There's an Alsatian language office now in Strasbourg.
They do.
Of course. Yeah, they have that now. As I said, they started some bilingual schools, especially in Strasbourg. It's possible now for some families that their children can have in Alsatian and in French their courses.
And is it very popular? Are many people doing this?
Not many, but some, yeah. The other thing is in the villages, of course, as I said at the beginning of the show, the young people hardly speak the dialect anymore. This is a little bit different in the villages. In the villages, dialect stays a little bit more the language of communication, but in the cities like Milou, Strasbourg, or Colmar, the dialect is not spoken by younger people. But there still exist today in the villages theaters, and they perform in dialect.
Mm-hmm. But it can.
The audience is 40 plus. You will have no young spectators for this dialect plays. No,
but it can change because, especially in rap music, dialects are quite popular. Isn't there any hip hop or rap in?
Yes, there is. That's a very, very good observation. That is true. Dialect survives quite well in music, and rock music, rap. That is true, yeah. You also had, after 68, it's a little bit out of fashion now, but after 1968 you had the Liedermacher, les chansonniers, where the dialect has become very important too. So yeah, you can say in the cultural sphere, music, theater, there is still dialect. And then they have cultural associations. I mentioned already the Gesellschaft. You don't have bilingual newspapers anymore per se, but there is still the Rheinblick, which is a weekly supplement to Les Nouvelles d'Alsace, if I'm not mistaken, and that is in German. So you have a little bit of German there, but especially it's in the cultural sphere.
Is there any local radio station that uses the language?
There used to be what was used to be called France Bleu Elsass, and they had some dialect programs, but France Bleu Elsass changed last year into Ici Alsace, and as I have tried I listened to them, and it was always in French. I haven't found any dialect program anymore.
No, and television? No television?
As far as I know, no, there used to be, but I couldn't find any station broadcasting in dialect anymore. There used to be before, I remember from my youth, Radio Dreieckland, who had a dialect program, free radio with a dialect program, but now it's either in standard German, because they are located also in Freiburg, or in standard French. And television, I wouldn't know.
I know that the public broadcaster of, maybe it was France Bleu, they did used to have shows in the Occitan language, I think also somewhere in the Breton language, very limited. I'm not sure if they still do that. Did that exist on French state media for the Elsass as well?
Yes, and there used to be, exactly, you're very, very well informed. France Bleu had this program, and there was a part that was called France Bleu Elzas. And they had, I think, from Monday to Friday in the morning and in the afternoon had a dialect program. But, as I said, this France Bleu Elzas changed into Ici Alsace, and Ici Alsace, I couldn't find any dialect program anymore. So, Ici Alsace is just internet radio now.
And what about commercial or free independent radio?
Yeah, I have tried to find some, but I couldn't really. I was hoping for Radio Dreieckland to still do that, but no. This is
And
probably because, I mean, it's addressed to young people, and as I said, younger people hardly speak the dialect anymore. It was also when there were still more bilingual newspapers, the sections sport, fashion, culture, they had to be in French, and these are especially the sections interesting for a younger audience.
But of course, it's a self-closing system. If you don't give any content that's interested in this language, then nobody is using it anymore. I mean,
right? Yeah.
It reinforces. It actually reinforces itself. If someone would have to take up the initiative to actually put something online, for example, that people can use, and then is there any online presence for the language? Because that's usually one last means that smaller languages can use.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
No. So, and let's talk about something else in culture. Has there been literature in the language, or is there still literature, poetry or novels being written?
Yes, you still have poetry, especially poetry in the dialect. I already mentioned André Weckmann. He writes in French, German, and in dialect. And you have there is a periodical. As a literary professor, I know it quite well. It's called Almende. And Almende is the subtitle is an Alemannic journal, and Almende is interesting for the regions, or for Alemannic regions, so to speak, where you speak Alemannic. So in northern Switzerland, southwest Germany, and Alsace, and they have published a lot of Alsatian poetry in dialect. And André Weckmann is published quite often there. There are also interesting essays on the situation of the Elsass. So yeah, you can still find poetry in the dialect. I don't know how many readers.
Well, that depends on the topic, of course. If it's only about flowers in the mountains, then, or is it also about political issues or actual issues or things that are happening in the world, or is it just about village life?
Life, the universe, everything.
It's modern. It's modern. It's as you said, it would just be looking backward to flowers and forests. That wouldn't be interesting at all. No, it is.
They can be sweet.
It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. It's very contemporary, speaking about political problems. So it's real. It's real poetry. So.
You mentioned poems and writing in Alemannic, and you mentioned the other regions where they speak Alemannic. So I would gather that there is some sort of more of a universal Alemannic standard that goes beyond the Elzas region. Then is there are there any norms or some kind of a normalization for spelling and all of that? Because it's not in standard in German, I would say.
Yeah,
I would assume.
Not really. You cannot really standardize the dialect, but I think everybody writes the way they speak it in their region. I mean. You might know the Alemannic author Johann Peter Hebel, who is a very interesting figure from the early 19th century. And this year, 2026, is a Hebel year. And Hebel, he became really world famous in a way with his Alemannische Gedichte. Goethe was an admirer of Johann Peter Hebel. And Hebel, this is a very interesting example again. Of course, he celebrated this year in Switzerland, in Germany, and in Alsace. Because he wrote in that dialect.
Is there lots of cross-border cooperation for the language, or dialects, or how you would call that continuum of speech?
Unfortunately not. There should be more. They have some, for example, I have a museum pass. I can visit museums in Switzerland, Elzas, and southwest Germany. They have a little bit things like that. There are cultural programs uniting the three regions again, the Alemannic space, if you want to call it like that. But this is, for example, Andre Wettmann writes about this in one of his essays, and he deplores exactly that situation, that there are not more initiatives between France and Germany. There are some, I mean, the universities of Strasbourg, Freiburg, and Bâle, they have a connection. They do a few courses together. There's an exchange between these three universities. So yeah, there are some signs of collaboration, but there could be more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you mentioned at the start somewhere that there is a lot of cross-border migration and economical movement, people that work on the other side. I suppose that must impact the language as well. I suppose that those migrants or those people that move around don't really pick up the language?
I would think so, that they would pick up some German with time, yeah. I mean, I cannot really tell you now what the situation there is, but I mean, one would think that, you know, that people would automatically speak more and more German, because, and I read, the last number I read, it was 100,000 Alsatian people are crossing the border every day.
Mm.
That's a lot.
But yeah, then of course there's a question, do they pick up standard German or the local variety? That's that would be a different matter, of course.
Yeah.
About people crossing borders, of course, a long time ago, there were not Germanic people living there. So is there anything known about the first inhabitants of the region?
Well, there were the Celts.
Yeah.
And then the Germans, and then the Alemannic tribes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I forgot what I wanted to ask now.
So the first language spoken there was a Celtic language then, which doesn't exist anymore. In which has
doesn't exist anymore, but I mean you can still find some monuments. From
really?
The period of the yeah, there's some, not a lot, but some. There are some monuments you can still see that the Celts were there, and some names I think refer to the Celtic language. Yeah. So
they haven't completely disappeared without any trace.
They have left a few traces.
Yeah.
Maybe for the record, are there actually any records or statistics concerning the language at the moment? Do they survey scientifically or from the state or whatever? Is there any picture of who exactly speaks, how many people speak the language, what its use actually is?
One number I read in an essay, but okay, that was from 2000, that's about 10 years ago now, was that 75% of young Alsatians don't speak the dialect anymore. So that is, the observation is that, yeah, from the elder generation, most of the people still speak the dialect, but they don't use it. They use it just in their generation. The parents would not speak in the dialect anymore to their children, mostly. So yeah, the last number I read was that 75% don't speak the dialect anymore, of younger people.
All right, we've gotten almost through. I still have some music to play. Maybe
is there anything you still wanted to add?
Well, I think Elsass is a very interesting, culturally very interesting region, always has been. I mean, one should not forget that Gutenberg, he was German, but I mean, he invented the printing press in Strasbourg. And by the way, there's a very interesting falsification of the French nation, because there's this Gutenberg monument in Strasbourg, and Gutenberg is holding a book in his hand, and it's written in French. For Gutenberg, for sure, did not publish things in French, maybe in Latin, but not in French.
Mm-hmm. He did.
But I wanted to say it was. I mean, there was Sebastian Brand with The Ship of Fools, and then very famous writers in modern literature, like I mentioned René Schickele. There's also Hans Arp, Dadaist and Surrealist, who published in German and a little bit in French. There was Ernst Stadler, a famous expressionist writer. So I think it's a very interesting region. Also, Elzas has always been a very prosperous region, first because of its wheat, then because of its wine. For a while, it was the biggest wine producer in Europe, I think, and even the King of England had Alsatian wine on the table. Wine production is still very important today. Then there was silver mines, and in the 19th and 20th century textile industry. So, and still today, Elzas is a very prosperous region. And as I said, I decided to live here because for me it is a very interesting area where you are close to Switzerland, close to Germany, you have French, and maybe to finish with a funny anecdote, I overheard the other day a conversation here on the marketplace, two elder women, and one said to the other, "Tomorrow I'm going to France." So that shows you how they see themselves. You know, France is still considered to be like a foreign state.
They have mentally checked out already from France, right? Okay. I think we can wrap it up. Are you still active somewhere? Can people find you? Or?
Oh yeah, I'm still active as a researcher. I mean, I publish, I go to conferences. Yeah, I'm still active. I have to mention this is not my main topic. You know, I'm working especially on modernism and the Austrian writer Josef Roth. But I mean, it is very interesting for me. And as I said, I also I was trying to explore also the culture of South Tyrol with writers there who write either in Italian or in German. So for me it's very interesting to study places where cultures meet. I think that is the Montreal effect.
Yeah, that might also be some interesting topic for us to explore at some point. We haven't actually done much about Italy in general, or what you can find there in our show. Maybe we should, because you mentioned that Napoleon was actually not French; he was Corsican.
Yeah.
Which used to be more closer to Italy than to France, actually.
Yes, we did something about Corsu once.
Yeah,
remember?
We did talk about Corsica, but yeah, it's
Corsu,
officially part.
the language.
It's officially part of France, of course.
Now
it is. But anyways, Professor Heizmann, thank you very much for your time and for your very insightful explanation of a region that many people may have visited, but not really know the history about or the culture, let alone the language. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we will leave it here with a song by a certain babusk, Sprogrenner.
And that means?
What does it mean?
Can you repeat the title?
Sprogrenner by babusk.
Sprog means language, and renner, Sprogrenner?
Yeah.
Okay, I cannot figure out.
It's one of the things you sent us, so.
Yeah. Okay.
But
okay. I cannot. No, Sprog. Sprog means language.
Yes, and then renner is R-E-N-N-A-R.
Yeah, I know what renner means. Renner is a runner, but it would mean language runner. I do not really.
No.
Well, that might actually be. The song might. I can see it on the video. There's some text in there. It's about poetry and all of that.
I just checked it. This is the word refers to a kind of a running course, and it's a running course crossing the border. So that is interesting. It's referring to an association, and this association calls itself Sprogrenner, which so it's a running course with several runners, and you cross the border doing that. So I think this is referring to exactly, this is a very positive ending maybe for the show, because this is something to see it as an opportunity, as an advantage to cross borders and to have several languages and cultures. So very positive song.
All right. Okay, we'll have a listen. Thank you very much, and maybe we'll talk to you at some point in the future. Thank you very much and enjoy the weekend.
All right,
En,
goodbye.
All right, Is, we zijn er dan
Tot volgende week.
ook
Tot
middag.
over 2 weken.
Aan
Hè?
onze luisteraars, bedankt om te luisteren en tot later.